Hi, I'm Dave. Thanks again for joining me on YouTube. Since my very first YouTube video, Dave's first guitar build, which was a kit, a PRS style guitar kit, I've been overwhelmed by the very nice comments that you guys out there have posted on that particular video. So thank you very much for that. It's encouraged me to think about doing something slightly different this time, buying a cheap, inexpensive, call it what you will, Chinese probably, Strat copy, second hand, seeing if I could smarten it up a bit, but without spending a lot of money on it. And if you're, say, a beginner guitarist, or you just want something to do as a project, then this is quite a worthwhile way of achieving something that you can be proud of. And so on the 28th of February 2018, I visited the smallest music shop in Edinburgh, Scotland. Probably the smallest music shop in Scotland as a whole, and doubtless in the UK as a whole. It really is a very small shop. This is Ricky's Music Shop in Leith Walk, Edinburgh. It's well worth a visit, this little shop. There's lots of interesting guitars and second-hand amplifiers. No big names, I would suggest, but some good value for money instruments, second-hand stuff if you're just starting out or want a project to do. Well worth a look. Ricky's Music Shop in Edinburgh. Here's the business card still shot coming up. So as I was passing, I looked in the window, and hanging from one of the tuning pegs on the neck of the guitar was a price tag that said £47 sterling. I thought that's definitely worth investigating. It was a black Strat copy. The brand name was CB Sky. Never heard of it. I went into the shop and spoke to the manager, a very nice chap, Ricky, and I noticed that the front price advertised was £119 down to £79, save £40. So I queried the price with the manager, with Ricky, and he said, yeah, that's wrong actually, but I'll let it go for £50. Put it in the bag, I said. So I took it home, and as I say, it was black. I stripped all of the components out of it, everything down to the body, to discover that it's a plywood body, and that doesn't bother me at all. I have experience of plywood body guitars, and in my experience they are very rigid and resonate well. Nice weight to them as well. So all this talk of mahogany bodies and ash bodies and alder bodies, I'm not sure it makes too much difference, to be honest. But as I say, it was a high sheen black finish from the manufacturer, which I completely stripped down. Didn't take it all off, but I gave it a good firm rub down with 230 grit sandpaper, then on to 400 and then 600 grit sandpaper, which rendered the whole thing very, very matte finish, very flat. There are no dings in the body of the guitar at all, so it was well worth doing as a project. So I'd like to show you the body now, stripped down and primed with Rust-Oleum Mode matte grey finish primer. Here's the body. Here it is. It's a grey finish, as you can see. This false neck was an attempt to aid the spraying process, which my good wife gave me a very good hand with. It's a two-person job, that. You'll see that I have masked off the cavities, the pickup cavity, the control cavity and the jack cavity, as well as the tremolo cavity. That's because prior to spraying I had painted on some EMI shielding paint, which will later hopefully act as a reduction in the possibility of single coil hum pickup. I must say though, when I first played the guitar prior to stripping it down, it didn't seem to hum too much at all through the amplifier, and so that bodes well. So it's nice and smooth, it's flat as you can see, and I'm hoping that it's going to spray up nicely with another Rust-Oleum mode paint. This is their high gloss aqua colour. It's a kind of cross between sea foam green and aqua blue. I quite like it. I'll be spraying that up, and then here's a still shot of the can itself I'll be using, and then finally I will coat it with some high gloss lacquer, being careful to give rub downs with the appropriate grit sandpaper, and drying times of course. So that's the body, that's the state it's in at the moment. The recording date of this video is the 12th of March 2018, and I'd like to show you the neck now that came with the guitar. Here it is. It's rosewood fingerboard, 22 frets, maple, and I have put my own custom logo on it. I don't know if that's coming out okay, but there's a still shot coming up showing that. Here it is. The neck is in good condition. The frets have no signs of wear at all, and when you apply the fret rocker tool across all of the frets, I find that there is no high spots or low spots at all, which is great. Mother of pearl style inlays, white dot markers along the top. The tuning heads are quite nice actually. Here we are, if you can see that. They are, I suppose, typical Chinese worm and cog mechanisms, which I completely dismantled and noticed that the factory applied grease many years ago had completely congealed and was serving no purpose at all. So these were all brushed out with WD-40, which they cleaned up nicely, no signs of wear there, and I re-greased, reassembled and put them back, and they're very nice and smooth. One thing that I did notice about the nut was that it was looked like somebody had tried to put a graphite nut in there, but it had been put in back to front. And so I removed that, came out quite easily, no damage done. It was back to front because the widest groove was accommodating the thinnest string, and vice versa at the top, the 6th string here, the thinnest groove was trying to accommodate the fattest string, and it obviously didn't look right, it didn't sit right. I had some bone nuts from a previous project, and with a little bit of filing manipulation I managed to seat this one nicely, and I'm hoping that when I string it up it'll be the right height. It looks about right. There is a slight upward bow, very slight upward bow in the neck at the moment. That's because it's not under string tension of course, but I noticed when I got the guitar that when it was under tension the neck was nice and flat, there was no buzzing. The frets here are nicely tapered off, very smooth, no catching on the hand. So all in all, the neck is quite worthwhile. The pickguard that came with the guitar is a standard plain white 3-ply white black white affair with the EMI shielding tape there across the cavity panel. Nothing special about that of course. The rear tremolo panel white of course, and I have treated that with EMI shielding paint as part of the hum cancelling process. On the body of course, when the tape comes off after final spraying, I will put a thin line of EMI shielding paint around all the cavities so that when the components go back in they make a connection and hopefully achieve minimum hum. The jack socket that came with the guitar was bent and, a good Scottish word, buckled. Bent and twisted. How that happened I don't know. It's showing signs of tarnishing and rust, so I decided that I would do away with that and replace it with a new one. Here's a still shot of the business card from the company that I procured it from, Amazon UK. So that'll make it look a bit smarter when it's finished. The pickguard I'm going to put on this guitar is one that I had from a previous project but didn't use. It's, as you can see, it's a white flake finish, nicer than the plain white, I think. The pickups are what came with the guitar. I guess they're standard ceramic pickups. Actually, when I played it, when I first got the guitar home, it sounded pretty good, not too thin and tinny, which you might expect, and I was quite pleased with the overall sound. The buttons are nice and white, all the markings are still there, still shots coming up. Also some still shots of the EMI shielding paint that I've put on the back here, and of the quality of the soldering, which looks quite clean. But there's nothing special about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on this particular project, and hopefully it'll turn out okay. All of the components were stripped out, as I said at the start. Here they are here in the box. The screws that hold the pick guard on were quite tarnished in the crossheads, and so I soaked them in Coca-Cola for 24 hours, and that helped to remove a great deal of the tarnishing. The saddles were soaked in WD-40, and they've come up like new. All of the little grub screws and springs, etc., move very freely, so that's going to go back together well. The claw springs, etc., are not too tarnished, they're good. The bridge plate is a usual thin type of Chinese bridge that you get. I've tightened it in as much as I can, but as I say, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on this, and hopefully it'll go back together again quite well, and I'm looking forward to giving it a play. So whilst I consider the best method of spraying the paint, I will leave it there just now, but I'll come back and finish this video when the time is right. For the moment, thanks for watching. It's now the 22nd of March 2018, and so many days have passed since I finished the first stage of this video on my Strat-style refurb project. Many days have passed because I do not have any specific spraying booth facilities at my disposal, and the weather in Edinburgh has been windy, very snowy and cold over the last couple of weeks or so, and it just has not been conducive to spraying paint. I do have the use of a garage, which of course gives a calm atmosphere, but it was cold and damp, and it just wasn't going to happen, so I was getting a bit impatient. However, fortunately, on the 20th of March 2018, lo and behold, we had a very nice spring day here in Edinburgh. It was about, well, hardly warm, it was hardly Florida, but it was about 10 or 11 degrees. It was windless, and so I thought, let's get on with it. So if you remember, I had primed the guitar body and I was about to spray it with Rust-Oleum Aqua Mode spray paint. It's a cross between, or it's like seafoam green, surf green, those famous Fender and Squier finishes, and it's a colour I'm particularly fond of. So remember that I had rubbed down the body. It used to be black, the guitar, nothing wrong with black guitars, but I just fancied one in this lovely kind of seafoam greeny blue colour. So with the false neck attached and my good wife by my side, we proceeded to the garden into the sunshine, and I gave the guitar body its first coat of Rust-Oleum Aqua. And it went on very well indeed. There was not too much loss of spray because it was very windless, and so I was quite pleased with it. 2 or 3 minutes later, the instructions say give it the next coat, which I did. These were light coats, consistent coats, sprayed back and forward, no stopping or starting of the spraying, just overlapping as you go, doing the horns first and the outside perimeter of the guitar first, followed by the front fascia and the rear of the body. So 2 coats on. It was looking really quite good, especially around the perimeter of the guitar. There was no orange peel effect there at all. I'm no scientist, but I'm not quite sure why there was orange peel showing on the front and back of the guitar. possibly something to do with it being the slab sides of the instrument, but the edges were really quite clear. So coat number 3 went on. There was no rubbing down in between the coats. Coat number 3 went on, and that's when disaster struck. A small flying insect, curse it, got stuck to the third coat of wet paint. I made the mistake of trying to remove the offending insect by hand and made the matter worse, because I really upset the finish round about the blemish. So a tip I think would be that if you have limited spraying facilities, yes, choose a warm day, choose a still day, and if anything does get stuck to it, leave it. It's probably easier to take it off once the paint has dried, and it's usually touch dry, this stuff, in 3 or 4 minutes. So having done the damage, I proceeded with coat number 4, and that exhausted the can. I got 4 coats, and it was looking great. I loved the colour. It was very nice. I'll show you the guitar in a moment. It's all finished, it's reassembled, ready to play. However, it needed to have some coats of clear coat on it, obviously, and I stuck with the Rust-Oleum manufacturer and gave the instrument 3 coats of Rust-Oleum clear coat, or was it 4? I think it was 4, and that exhausted the can as well. It's a 400 milliliter can, so that'll give you an idea of how much paint is in it if you're going to put 3 or 4 coats on your project. The edges of the guitar showed very little signs of orange peel, but again, like the paint, the clear coat did orange peel quite a bit. It wasn't deadly, but I knew that I would have to remove that as much as possible, and so once the clear coat had dried, in fact it was 2 or 3 days that I'd left it to dry properly, I rubbed down starting with 2000 grit paper, wet and dry. The paper had been steeping overnight in water with 1 drop of washing up liquid in the bowl. So 2000 grit was used. I did it by hand. I had a small pencil rubber, so it was a very small block, and I carefully did 1 piece at a time, 1 area at a time on the front, didn't touch the sides or the edges, cleared it off, had a look at it, wet the surface again on another area, and did that repeatedly around the front and the back of the guitar. So that was 2000 grit. It took half an hour to do the front, half an hour to do the back, but certainly the orange peel had flattened out, although it was still evident. And so I then moved up to 3000 grit. I suppose if I'd used a heavier grit, I was worried that it might burn, or it might cut through the coats of clear coat to the paint, and that would have been a disaster. So I erred on the side of caution, used 3000 grit, that took it out a little bit more, and finished off with 5000 grit, all done by hand with wet and dry paper. The orange peel was still very slightly evident, and I was hoping that the rubbing compound which I used after that, which was G3 Farecla, which is really a car-based product for taking minor scratches out. It's kind of like a fine version of T-cut, I would say. And I did that by electric drill with a pad, and again a little bit of moisture on the pad, some drops of the product on the pad, and proceeded to circular motion round the front of the guitar, the face of the guitar and the rear of the guitar, and that polished it up very nicely indeed, gave a higher gloss finish than the Rust-Oleum clear coat did, or maybe around about the same. So it was a nice gloss finish, but it was beginning to shine a bit more now. I had another look at it, and so I thought I'm going to do that again. So same process, moistened the pad, a few drops of product on the pad, on the electric drill. I was revolving around about maybe 500 or 600 RPM. Did it very carefully, no pressure applied at all, just let the weight of the drill, in fact probably took some of the weight of the drill off, and it did a great job of giving me a final finish. Well, not quite a final finish, because the final coating that I gave it was pure carnauba wax. This is something which, if you apply just by hand, will dry in about 15 minutes to a haze, and then you can buff off, gives a nice hard shine, and that really brought the shine up on the guitar, which I'm about to show you. So Thanks for your patience. So 2 coats of carnauba wax and the body was finished, ready for reassembly. And it's been an interesting project, taken me longer than I thought. At this stage, just before I show you the instrument, thank you very much to everybody who's subscribed to my channel. I never expected to get this kind of response to some of the stuff I've launched on YouTube. I'm a humble guy, don't have a great deal of facilities, just a little bit of common sense, a little bit of DIY skill and an interest in YouTube videos telling me how to do things. So here's the guitar. As you can see, I hope you like the colour. I absolutely love this colour. Remember, this guitar started off life as black. So, I love this colour. As I say, it's I'll give a still shot of the actual finish, which might give a clearer idea of the quality of the finish on it. It feels very smooth indeed, and it was ready to be strung up, which I did with Ernie Ball 9-gauge strings. The nut which I'd put on was fine from a height point of view. The saddles needed to be raised because I had taken the grub screws all the way down to soak them in the WD-40, which I mentioned earlier. I put the saddles back in, of course. I've hard-tailed the bridge and raised the saddles, gave them the usual stagger, and intonated the guitar, and it intonated fine, absolutely fine. And so it's been a successful project. I hope you've enjoyed watching my efforts here. I'm going to give you a little bit of playing at the end. As I've said always, I'm no great guitarist. I wish I was. I'd give my right arm, well, that'd be a bit silly, wouldn't it? Give my right arm to be a great guitarist, but I'll never be that. I just love doing things like this, and I hope that you like the end result. Thank you very much for watching. Here's a little bit of playing for you.